This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And today we are talking about feeling all feelings. So I think this is probably really good after a year of being cooped up in the house for COVID. So take it away.
All right, so we've been following the authors of the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and this is commitment number 3. I'm not going to go through all 15, but
Sure.
we did the first one, which is radical responsibility, and this is the third one, which is committing to feeling all feelings. And the authors basically are saying that to be a conscious leader, there are certain things we have to commit to in order to be effective. And when we talk about leadership, we're talking about ourselves. It doesn't have to be of a big corporation. They're talking about it in that context for sure, but it just means who we are embodying at any given time in whatever role we have.
Okay.
And so basically when the term conscious commitment, to make sure we're on the same page, that's their phrase, is gathering one's energy and moving it in a chosen direction. So in other words, that it's an energetic experience, not a moral one, all right?
Okay.
So remember we talked in the past about the 4 ways of being, the by me and to me and so on. Well, to is victimhood. By me is being open and curious and looking at any situation in terms of what can I learn from this, and not being defensive. So in this context, they say that this commitment, this one in particular, is a gateway or an entry gate to by me way of being, from the first one to the second one. And I shouldn't say that because they're not technically linear. All right. And that's the one where we want to spend a lot of time because that's going to offer us the most opportunity to learn.
Okay.
And they quote Guy Hendricks, who he and his wife are very well-known authors on all sorts of personal development and psychology and so on. So Guy Hendricks basically said, all drama is caused by unaligned commitments and unclear and unkept agreements. So how does that land?
Wait, say that one again.
All drama is caused by unaligned commitments and unclear and unkept agreements.
So what I'm getting out of it is arguments are caused by something that we maybe think we're hearing, but may not being delivered in that same manner.
Go ahead.
So I'm thinking of every once in a while, my husband will sort of tease me about my hearing and my hearing aids. And sometimes I hear it as a tease and he's just being cutesy. And sometimes I hear it as, why can't you hear me? What is your problem? And so if you don't understand, or if you misinterpret what's being said to you, you're going to possibly feel bad and create an argument over it, which sometimes I do. And she laughs at me.
By yourself?
That wouldn't happen.
No, not to me. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And one of them is that in Landmark, they call it being your word. So basically doing what you say, right? And so when we say we're going to do something and we fail to do it, we can cause a lot of agita for other people as well as for ourselves. I mean, we can feel bad about it, and then we get, head trash going on, and so on. And when they're talking about being aligned or unaligned, alignment is, or an alignment check is a conversation where 2 or more people examine whether they're aligned, whether they're headed in the same direction.
Oh, okay.
Are we on the same page or not? Those kinds of things. So in the context of feeling all feelings, it's saying out loud or to yourself, I commit to feeling my feelings all the way through to completion. So how does that occur to you?
So I'm allowing myself to feel all the way through completion, but what if I'm not understanding and that changes my feelings? Is that well, I guess there's no okay or not okay. Um, I'm allowing myself, I don't know. That's confusing to me.
Okay. So the way they explain it is they say that the feelings come and we locate them in our body and just let them do what they do as the feeling and the sensations move through our body. And then we breathe and vocalize them so they can release all the way through.
That can create an argument, though.
And I'm only laughing because I can see your face like a little.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm thinking about this, I mean, it's like if I'm allowing myself to feel and then vocalize what I'm feeling, um, if it's not a pleasant feeling, I can see that, escalating almost like a volcano.
So let's use the example of your husband teasing you.
Okay.
In the instance where you happen to take it as not lighthearted.
Right.
And so what would the feeling be?
The feeling starts with resentment because you don't understand why I can't hear you. And then it's, if you can't hear me, then, why am I wearing these hearing aids? And I'll remind him that, I'm doing the best I can. Maybe he has to try harder. And then it becomes, an argument about something that he didn't mean it to be that way. And then I get even angrier because then why are you teasing me over something that I'm sensitive about?
Okay. So what if you internally vocalized it in that kind of instance?
See, that helps me. If I internally vocalize it and don't say it out loud and get mad at him, then I can feel it and say, hey, you know what? It is what it is. And, maybe he's teasing, maybe he's not, but it's not worth an argument. And that's where I would stop it.
And when he does that kind of tease and you start feeling resentment, where do you feel it in your body? Where does it show up?
The strange part is it shows up in my ears that I don't hear as well. It's like I feel like, I am totally blocked to hearing what is going on around me until I can take that deep breath and say to myself, it is okay. And, don't take it so personally. And, you'll get through this. So my vocalization isn't out loud. It's more internally to myself, how not to overly respond.
Overly meaning?
Meaning, bring it out vocally and get mad at him for something that it's at the end of the day, it really is a minor issue. So it's not worth an argument to me.
But it's something that recurs.
It does. And if I calm myself first, like I was saying, convince myself that it's okay, I then can talk to him normally and remind him that this is something that I don't like. And he'll listen and he'll get it and he'll be really great about it for a couple of days. And then something will trigger him to do it again, whether it's, and I'll give an example of what actually happened this morning. Before we were going to work, we were both sitting in front of the TV. He was actually watching it. I was not. He loves commercials. So he heard a commercial and he made a comment about, that's just like you. But I didn't hear that comment. And he said it again a little bit louder. And I said, what is just like me? And he goes, well, if you turn your hearing aids up, you might be able to hear what we're talking about. Well, it wasn't that I had to turn my hearing aids up. I had to be paying attention to the TV. And I wasn't. And so I calmed myself internally rather than blow up at him and tell him I wasn't watching the TV and I didn't hear it. And, why are you picking on me? Instead, I just said, well, I'm glad you enjoyed the TV and you saw something interesting on there, but I'm not interested. And he looked at me and he smirked and that was it. And that's the best way for me to do it.
And where was your feeling that initiated? What happened to it?
Once I initiated, it was like I had crystal clear hearing. But in the beginning, it was like everything was blocked and I knew what was happening. And that's when I knew that I had to sort of let it go and not let it, cut me off from everything.
And what was your feeling then?
Oh, then I feel good. Then I feel like I'm the winner. I told him.
And where does that show up in the body?
And
how does it show up?
Usually it shows up that I just feel very, very at ease, very relaxed. Nothing, I can't pinpoint it and say that, it's in my stomach or it's in my head. I just overall have that aura of, I handled this well. I feel good, I'm okay.
So what could have been a trigger got untriggered?
What could have been a trigger that I untriggered? Is that
yes.
What so what could have been a trigger is if I hadn't allowed myself to take those few seconds to think about what was going on. Okay. To realize that, hey, my ears are blocking up. I'm really not hearing. This is upsetting me, but it doesn't have to. But if I had allowed it to continue to trigger me, I wouldn't have had those thoughts. And I probably would have started, saying things to him that probably would have sounded incoherent because I would have probably brought the whole kitchen sink out about all the things that, that he does that upset me. Not that there's very many.
So what you're telling me is that you had that moment, that little pause between the stimulus and your ability to work it through, so that your response was something that was a choice and not just a reaction.
Right.
Okay. And that felt good.
Oh, always does. No matter what the situation is, if I can take that pause and make a choice that is my choice, not just, a reaction to something, it always feels so much better.
So what you demonstrated, whether you knew it or not, was you went from a potential to me way of being, which is resisting, judging, apologizing, repressing, avoiding, or withholding, to a by me, which is, I'm going to be open and curious and accepting of this, and then working through what you were feeling.
Exactly.
So what the authors tell us is that a lot of leaders discount feelings as distractions. Oh, those pesky little things that get in the way. And it's a distraction from rational decision making. And so they may be looking at data and so on, but denying the underlying emotional dynamics. And I know that you've heard of emotional intelligence. It's been a big buzzword now since, what's his name? I think it's Goldsmith wrote the book. It's Gold something, I can never remember which. But, it's a great, great book. But basically they're saying it's essential for great leaders. You can be a leader, but those who are really great are the ones that are aware of or have some natural skill regarding emotional intelligence. But in order to be truly aware of the dynamics, it's important to understand the definition of an emotion. So any thoughts about what an emotion is?
Well, for me, an emotion is, um, whether it's laughing, crying, feeling hurt. And when I say feeling hurt, usually there's a component physically as well as mentally where I'm feeling hurt. So it sort of takes us back to the topic. It's the emotion is a feeling that we get from something. And as I think about my own upbringing, I took on not just my feelings, but the feelings of people around me. So I mean, I walked around in a state of confusion. It's like, am I hurting because this is what I feel, or am I happy because you're over there laughing? And I didn't allow myself to think for myself.
Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of people. And in my family, I was always too sensitive. And it wasn't until, years later, I just based on me studying and delving into these things, I realized it was their way of not taking responsibility for maybe having said something where my feelings were hurt. And, maybe I am too sensitive, but I was just sensitive. I was a sensitive little kid. And we were a teasing family, and sometimes teasing went a little too far. And, I'm acutely aware of when I see little kids being teased in families, how that might feel. So the cool thing, when I was delving into this, I mean, cool for me, you can be the judge and let me know, and I'll be open and curious and accepting. But the idea is to, what they say, they talk about emotion as being an energy, an actual energy that produces physical sensations. So I may have mentioned, I can't imagine that you would have memorized this, but there's a guy called Bruce Lipton. He's a PhD doctor, and he wrote The Biology of Belief. And I actually met him when his book was first released, just a fluky thing, and had a little abstract from it. And at the time, he was kind of considered a crackpot in scientific circles. It would seem like such a far-fetched concept, but in time, he has become quite a leader in that field, and well embraced. His theories have been embraced by the medical and scientific communities. And basically, there's a Dr. Richard Stevenson at the University of Wisconsin that has used functional MRI studies since the late 70s to actually show where in the brain each emotion is felt,
Right.
triggered. And then Dr. Bruce Lipton tells us exactly how the chemicals that are released in our brain from these emotions turn on gene triggers or turn them off. Just fascinating, I mean, for me. So the idea is to understand that this is energy moving in and on our body, triggered by these things we call emotions. And then they're neither good nor bad. So hunger pains, I mean, yes, it may be sad, bad if we're hungry, but it's really not a bad thing in essence, right? So
Right.
The authors identify 5 core emotions, and then we have little subsets spinning off from each one. So there's anger, there's fear, there's sadness, and there's joy. And we tend to characterize anger, well, most of these except for joy, and wait, last one, how could I leave this one off? Sexual feelings. And so it's hard, you know, we characterize most of these as feelings that are less than desirable, but they're normal, all right? And
Absolutely.
so any thoughts about that, the core emotions?
Well, you know, we go through them regularly, I think, during the day. I mean, we're not always joyful. Um, and, you know, I was listening to some music driving to work earlier today, and it made me sad. Um, you know, I was feeling really good, and all of a sudden I'm listening to this song, and it was beautiful, but I was close to tears. Um, I got to work, and a couple of things happened, and um, I was feeling a little, I won't say a little, I will say a lot angry. But knowing my surroundings, I knew I could not react to that anger, which is probably a good thing, because as the day went on, what I thought was really anger was more like annoyance. And so if I had been someplace where I could have reacted to that anger, it probably would have been the wrong thing for me to do. So I think those emotions are what keep us going during the day. They keep us
The
alive.
explanation that we're on this not a roller coaster necessarily, but this, you know, ebbing and flowing of all sorts of things. They're going on and off or in and out of each other all day long. It's not like breathing, we can't turn it off voluntarily, and kind of like an autonomic process in the body.
Yep.
So what they're telling us is, whenever, you know, to the degree that we can stop, look, and listen more or less to what's going on right now, you know, what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? We'll notice that each emotion by category has a very unique energy pattern and set of sensations on the body. And then I just know from other things that I've studied that we can have our favorite places to feel these things. So some people, it might be a clenched jaw. Another person might be, you know, clenched fists, or like a gut punch in
Yep.
the stomach area, and so on. And there's a guy I've coached for a long time. In the beginning, he was very, very buttoned up in terms of his feelings, and maybe he had one or two, but you know, over time we discovered that his repertoire was maybe 2 keys on the emotion keyboard. And whenever I would ask him questions like, you know, what are you feeling, he would start out the sentence saying, well, I think I would feel such and such. All right, so he's very much in his head because that was his training. He was a lawyer. And you know, we're trained to think, we're trained to analyze, we're trained to problem solve. We're not feeling. Yes, we can have passion about certain causes and so on, but you know, personal feelings, you know, they're both in. So the idea was, over time, he had a real hard time locating these things in his body. We're at the point now that, like, he can spot it immediately, and what has resulted for him, I have to say, is that now he's playing the full emotion keyboard, and it's it's a much richer, more technicolor life, and he's having ease and just some wonderful things just by letting go and just by noticing.
Well, and that makes so much sense to me because, as I brought up before, and I certainly don't blame my parents because I don't think what they did was intentional, but I was the type of child that um, everything was my fault. So I put it on myself before anybody else would point a finger at me because I felt more in control. Okay. Um, and because everything was my fault, I always felt um, isolated. And I would, like you mentioned, you were an emotional child. I was an extremely emotional child. My father would walk in the house, and if he didn't have a smile on his face, I made him mad, even though he hadn't even seen me yet. Okay. I saw him walk through the door, no smile, and I would start to cry because I made my father mad. Well, guess what? That did make my father mad because I was crying and blaming him for something that didn't really happen. Um, but it's really within like the last 10 years, I've given myself permission not to take the blame and to experience what I'm going through. And it does free you. It does make you realize that, hey, I was just laughing 10 minutes ago and that was really enjoyable. Oh, I just heard a song right now and yeah, that made me sad, but
You froze on me.
I can identify where it's coming from. So
You froze on me.
oh, I froze on you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Now
Oh,
I just have a little note that
oh.
my is unstable.
So basically what I was saying is that I have all these emotions now that I didn't allow myself to have growing up.
And how does that feel?
It is freeing, and it makes me realize that it's okay to be angry one moment and feel good the next moment because everything is evolving. And so you don't have to stay in a certain, a certain emotion just because, oh, I'm feeling sad right now. Oh, I'm going to be sad all day long. Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Lipton also talks about, repressing feelings and, all that stuff that we can be prone to do and society helps encourage us to do can be some of that biology of belief, turning on triggers, turning off triggers that are releasing chemicals or triggering genetic expression or turning off genetic expression. So the steps they talk about in the book are basically what we talked about is, identify the emotion, locate where it shows up in the body. You can look for the pattern. You'll tend to have the same emotion show up in the same places. Describe its precise nature as accurately as possible, internally. Breathe into it, deep belly breath. Allow it, accept it, appreciate it, just be with it, and then release it on the exhale. They also talk about the drift list. So this is where early on in these podcasts, we were talking about above the line and below the line.
Right.
So above the line is where we're open and curious. Below the line is when we're closed off and defensive and so on. And so they talk about the drift list where we go unconscious and we are blaming and closing off and we're distracting ourselves with things and so on. So by being open and committing to feeling our feelings through to completion as it works our way through the body and not trying to shut it off or act on it, it's being in touch with our authentic feelings and thoughts.
Okay.
What is something that you can take forward into your day or week with the conversation today?
Well, I think it's more about allowing ourselves to experience the feeling and either don't let it overtake you, um, unless, and I am thinking of an anger feeling, okay, not to let it totally embrace you to the point that um, you don't take that time to take that deep breath and, s- and in some way analyze what is going on so that you can move forward and be your best you.
Yeah, and in the context of the book, to go from being a to me, this is happening to me, to being by me, which is I'm open and curious, and I'm seeing what this moment has to offer me.
Right. Absolutely.
Cool, cool.
Oh, you took me through a lot today, especially after a full day of work. Um,
And it sounds like a roller coaster of emotions.
oh, it certainly is. It's holiday time, and you're trying to please everybody, and it's also COVID, and it's not easy to please everybody. So, but I,
Well,
I
what a wonderful time to experiment with these concepts.
absolutely,
You can
absolutely.
thank people now. Thank you for that opportunity.
Well, we will do this again in 2 weeks. Until then, you take care
You
and
too, and stay safe.
absolutely. Bye, everybody.
You. Bye-bye.